I bought BTD6 the day it came out, not knowing it would take me over 4,000 hours to get through every map, every boss, and every achievement. At first it was simple, the tutorial, basic game modes, and unlocking all the monkeys. But then I found Hbomb. I loved making extra money with banana farms, pushing to round 100, and fighting Bloons I'd never seen before. I was hooked. I started clearing map after map, collecting medals, beating Hbomb, slowly feeling like I was mastering the game. Every new upgrade I unlocked felt like progress. Getting more and more monkey knowledge points was exciting, but eventually, I had beaten every game mode but chimps. It was exactly like Hbomb, but we can't sell monkeys, make extra money, or even use our monkey knowledge perks. And man did I struggle. Everything I liked was banned, and the final rounds were brutal without farming. So I went online looking for strategies. But no one had figured out chimps yet. Not even Hbomb guides existed. So I started making my own. Just simple videos to help people out. Nothing crazy, mostly just Hbomb guides on easy maps. But I kept trying chimps mode, and eventually I got it. Instead of starting with a couple dart monkeys and selling them to afford something else, I got a ninja down right away and made him a 301 double shot, letting me get Hbomb and a stronger stim. The funny thing was I didn't know that the elk would prioritize the closest monkey to it, so he was buffing Hbomb the entire game. But I beat the middle rounds with a sun avatar and the late game with a Comanche commander and icicle impale. Honestly, not a bad strat that would even work today. But this gave me every medal for Monkey Meadow, unlocking the beautiful black border, marking the completion of a map. And naturally, I wanted to get that on every map in the game. Soon, I was beating a few modes a day, recording any half cash, Hbomb, and chimps runs that I found good enough to be guides. The funny thing was that I spammed the same strats every time. I beat half cash with Gwen, a Juggernaut, and 3 Bloon Shih Tzus, Hbomb with Banana Banks, Super Monkeys, and an Archmage, and chimps just like I beat Monkey Meadow. I was super one-dimensional, but because I went map by map and didn't spam one game mode, it wasn't repetitive to me. It would take a few days and several runs before I'd use my chimp strategy again. Who did get bored of it though were the viewers. I didn't get many comments back then, so when people complained about me doing the same thing every video, I saw, and I branched out, testing different combos, trying every monkey, and looking at other YouTube videos. Quickly, my repertoire expanded. I was rocking the Permaspike, Avatar of Wrath, 21 Ninjas, Sub Army, and the Apache Prime. I don't know if I would have done this if I didn't make videos, but it made the game so much more fun. And I could take on harder and harder maps with all these new strats. While going through them, I unlocked more and more achievements. And the best part? They give some nice rewards like Monkey Money, Insta-Monkeys, or even secret options like Small Bloons. So I put them into 3 buckets. There are achievements that will come with time, those that you can do something specific, and ones that'll be an absolute grind. If I ever needed a break from black bordering maps, I'd look up an achievement and get to work. There were plenty we already had, like win on 9 different beginner maps, buy a tier 5 upgrade, use a hero's level 3 ability, etc. But it was time to start the official achievement hunt. I don't remember the exact order I got them in, but we'll cover them all. To start, we have I See You and Oathbreakers, where we need to reveal 10,000 camo Bloons using Shimmer and reanimate 250,000 Bloons with the Necromancer, which we can do at the same time. I placed 10 Necros at the starter logs and went deep into Freeplay, letting them constantly decamo and resurrect Bloons until we got both achievements. All for one and one for one requires us to win a game on hard mode with only one monkey on screen at a time. Selling is allowed, so I started with a Buccaneer, upgrading it to a 024 flavored trades to defend the rounds and make us some extra money. On round 39, I sold the Buck and placed a new one, making it a 042 for much more popping power and giving us the hook ability that can one-shot blimps. Then, on round 46, I sold it again and built a 420 Apache dart ship, which could solo until the 70s, where we could make it an Apache Prime, being more than enough to get the win. Alchemistman and Bloonicle Boy was my first hidden achievement, where I needed to get 900,000 damage or more on a Bloon Master Alchemist before round 100. It was sketchy, as most of his damage comes in the last 10 rounds, but with enough farming, it wasn't too bad. And it gave us the small Bloon option, which I had equipped for years. The greatest challenge, where we needed to create or play 200 challenges, so I made the fastest one I could think of. A weak and speedy round 40, and I made a macro for my computer to beat it over and over again, getting it done in about 30 minutes. Speaking of challenges, we had a long one to complete. the daily read, where we needed to beat 365 unique daily challenges. Luckily, we can do the normal and advanced challenge every day, so this will take us about half a year if we do every single one. This will also give us the win 100 daily challenges, complete every daily challenge in a week, and will open the daily chest every time we get on, which will give us a year in the making after the 365th chest. Luckily, both the daily chest and challenges give us rewards, like powers and insta-monkeys, which filled out a few more achievements for us. Our powers combined, Tower Keeper, and Insta-Sentry were all easy to finish, though it did pain me to use 100 insta-monkeys. I don't know why, I just like holding on to them like they're potions in Skyrim or something. And for the last challenge related one, we had to beat 100 different community challenges. It was a bit of a grind, but I just filtered by easy and beat a few every day. Next was Living on the Edge, where I had to beat a non-chimps or impoppable game with only one life remaining, which wasn't too bad as I just microed a submarine to let some bloons through. Significantly harder though was Snap of Your Fingers, where I needed to finish a game with exactly half my starting lives and cash. I did this on deflation, so we had to win with 100 lives and 10 grand remaining, which led to some tactical leaks and cheap defenders. Odysseys came out around this time and introduced several new achievements. We had to complete an Odyssey in under an hour, complete 50 and 100 Odysseys, and complete all 3 difficulties of a single Odyssey, which literally took me years. But eventually, there was a week where it was very quick, and I grinded that out 20 or so times to finish off the achievement. It also brought a new hidden one, Mo Heroes, Mo Problems, where we just had to complete an Odyssey without a hero. Easy enough. But that brings us to the 2TC, the most popular challenge in BTD6, where you need to beat a game of chimps with only 2 monkeys. This was incredibly difficult back in the day, but has gotten much easier over the years. I did this with a Wizard Lord Phoenix and Apache Prime, but these days you can do it with just about anything. And we followed this with the second most popular challenge, the 2 Mega Pops, which just means we have to beat a game of chimps with 1 tower dealing over 2 million damage, which is about 98% of the pops. I chose to do this with a super buffed carrier flagship in the middle of logs. This is still the easiest map in the game, but back then it wasn't even close. The next easiest was Cubism, which is significantly shorter. But Logs is the map I've done most of my free play runs on. Freeplay is any round after getting the win, and it's endless, but the bloons get faster and tankier with every round. Luckily for us, it's also where an absurd number of blimps get sent our way, with many of them being fortified. So every once in a while, I'd set up some crazy defenses and let it run overnight. Why? Well, there were some wild achievements that this would put a dent in. I'm talking popping 100 million bloons, 250,000 camos, 100,000 purples, 20,000 rainbow bloons with magic monkeys, 25,000 Moabs, 10,000 BFBs, 5,000 ZOMGs, 5,000 DDTs, 1,000 bads, and worst of all, popping 5 million fortified balloons. Sapper is the most infamous achievement in the game, as even if you grind free play, it'll take you forever to get. So these runs knocked off most of the popping achievements, with Superbad and Sapper having a lot remaining. Taking a break from the grind, it was time to get all the co-op achievements. There are 16 that some viewers and I knocked out pretty quick. These included, but were not limited to, getting 4 heroes on screen at once, popping 10 million bloons, beating 10 games of hard mode, using 5 insta-monkeys, 100 powers, emoting 100 times, and sending tons of money to other players, with the largest being Bill Greats, a hidden achievement where you need to send $500,000 with 1 click. Meaning you need to have 2.5 million saved up, as you can only send 20% of your cash with each donation. But these runs gave us all 16 co-op achievements. The next category we have are race events, which I've never really gotten into, but we need to beat a race in under 3 minutes to get 3 achievements, which I just followed a guide to do. And the last race achievement is to enter 500 races. Kind of a wild benchmark, but I just used a race pass that gave us unlimited entries and set up a macro to enter a race, exit to home, and repeat a few hundred times. I just let this run while I was at work and came home to a new achievement. But now, let's speed run through a bunch of easy ones. I blackboarded Peninsula, popping 200,000 bloons in the process. We finally bought 20,000 upgrades for the Tools of Darwin, won 10 games with only support monkeys, won 100 games with a hero skin equipped. I made a VTSG with level 20 Adora in range, won 10 games with Pat Fusty, did 1 billion damage with the BMA in free play, glued 500,000 bloons, popped 1 million bloons with Dartling Gunners, placed 50 monkeys in a single map, had 75 buffs active at once, beat round 100 on deflation and apocalypse, put myself in a lot of debt, beat cornfield without removing any corn, beat dark castle with a permaspike, played the Oompa Loompa song on Candy Falls, won 10 games with only big monkeys, gained 10 levels of Adora in one sacrifice, beat a game of chimps while having all 3 tier 5 sniper monkeys, beat Spice Island's ABR only using land monkeys, won 100 games without removing any obstacles, got 25,000 critical hits, and used the Alchemist transforming tonic ability 100 times. But then, something beautiful happened. Boss events got added to BTD6. On top of just being a great addition to the game, it gave players a reason to go past round 100. You see, the last fight in a boss event starts on round 120 and can last a few rounds. Plus, the first boss balloon, Bloonarius, spawns fortified bads in the final fight, making Sapper and Superbad much more natural. For the next 2.5 years, I got on every Saturday morning to take on whatever boss came our way. Bugged Lich, Speedy Dreadbloon, or Bloonarius on #ouch. It didn't matter. I was there to win. But this was the least grindy Bloons related task I did. It was genuinely something I looked forward to every week, to the point where I made a history of boss events video to remember all the fun fights. But spending hundreds of hours beating bosses got me 16 new achievements. We beat over 50 of them, beat one without a hero, got over 5 million XP on the banana farm, got over 1,000 lives at once, spent 1,000 monkey money on continues, made a degree 100 paragon, spending a lot of money on it. I used a tech bot or farmer every week, slowly getting me to the 100 powers threshold, Superbad and Sapper. Somehow, I did the hardest 2 just by playing the game, which made me want to finish the rest that much more. And there were only 19 achievements left. One that had eluded me for a long time was Crash of the Titans, where we needed to strip the fortified property off 3,000 DDTs. Not only is this a ton, but I never stripped this property because then there wouldn't be fortified balloons to count towards Sapper. But now that that's done, it was time to play some Freeplay with a Bloon incineration, making all of the balloons weaker. This still took a few runs, but it was doable. And while getting this, I also worked on Hook, Line, and Sinker, where we need to rope in 3,000 blimps using Monkey Pirates, which honestly went pretty fast as I just got a bunch of them and spammed their ability. Once the Beast Handler and quests were introduced to BTD6, we got their 2 achievements right away. But there were some grindy ones left. We had to move 1,000 monkeys with support Chinooks, which took a Regrow Farm, a ton of helipilots, and about an hour. We needed to open a diamond crate in a collection event, which meant getting 1,000 points and then opening the crate, which is about 20 impoppable runs on expert maps. Luckily, boss events, races, and daily challenges also give these rewards, so getting 1,000 was a bit more fun than grinding impoppable. And after a few diamond crates, I got a couple tier 5 insta monkeys, which I used to get instant gratification, using a tier 5 insta to get a new one and an achievement. But that leaves us with the Monkey Teams and Golden Bloons section. These 2 special modes alternate, with Monkey Teams running from Monday to Thursday and Golden Bloons Friday through Sunday. Monkey Teams picks 3 random monkeys, and if you win only using them and a hero, you get a little extra monkey money. Not too bad, and can add a fun challenge if you're just messing around. The only problem was that we needed to win with 100 monkey teams. I would find the easiest map, boot up a game of deflation, and let our monkey team run. Over and over again, several times a day for about a month. Thank goodness this is when I went full-time doing YouTube, so I could take a break from writing and set up a new run anytime one ended. But that leaves Golden Bloons, which was so much worse. This event adds a Golden Bloon tier runs that spawns once every 10 rounds, starting in the 20s. Each time it takes damage, it quickly moves to a different spot on the map, has plenty of health, and gets more and more immunities the further into the game you go, but they don't spawn on deflation, chimps, or in Freeplay, meaning the most you can face in a game is on impoppable, where 8 will spawn. The strat is to set up ice monkeys away from the rest of your towers so they can permafreeze the goldens until popped, but even that can be tricky sometimes. Now, we'll say a game of impoppable takes 20 minutes to beat, and you can pop up to 8 golden balloons. How many do you think I had to pop for this achievement? 50? 100? It was 500. 500 golden balloons. If I played perfect, getting all 8 every game of impoppable, that would get me 24 an hour, taking almost 21 hours of playing golden balloons. And let me tell you, it took longer than that. And I swear, every time I was in the mood to grind it out, it was on the monkey team's days, so I couldn't even do it. To add insult to injury, there was another achievement where we needed to pop 50 golden balloons in Magic Monkeys only mode. Significantly harder since I couldn't freeze them, but we got most of them with Hbomb ninjas. And don't worry, I made sure to do this before getting glorious gold, so the 50 counted towards the 500. And just like that, there are only 5 achievements left. 3 were very easy as they came out with the new contested territory mode, and I got them in the first week or 2 of playing the new event. No grinding, I just got them naturally. And the final 2 achievements are both new and hidden. Nah, I'd win, and they call me Cave Monkey. The first, we had to beat the Tar Pits Easter egg map on hard, which was surprisingly difficult, but between some subs, a sniper, and pirate lord, we got through. And the latter had us hit the Cave Monkey spot 50,000 times with mortar monkeys, something that only took about 15 minutes as I filled the map with artillery batteries. At this point, we've beaten every boss, gotten every achievement, and during that grind, we've beaten every map except some experts. The hardest maps in the game. We have Ravine, Glacial Trail, Dark Dungeons, Bloody Puddles, Quad, and #ouch left. Starting with Ravine, there are 4 tracks that alternate use. The 2 on the left send balloons on the even number rounds, while the 2 on the right are active on the odds. We started off with 3 dart monkeys and the sword Easter egg to beat the first couple rounds, and kept placing darts until we had 6 of them. Here is where we could finally save up for Hbomb and eventually a druid. This could handle the early game, and we popped round 40 in a creative way. We gave Hbomb the AMD buff, letting his brambles pop open the Moab, and our tornado druid pushed all the ceramics back, giving us time to pop them. The mid game was handled with an arcane spike, 2 ball lightnings, and a spiked balls, letting us save all the way up for a Moab domination. I'm still surprised this could defend long enough for us to afford the $54,000 upgrade, but once we had it, we were off to the races. I buffed it with an overclock, elk, and village, which basically let it solo the late game and was more than enough to beat Ravine chimps. Next, we have Quad, a doozy of a map with its 4 active tracks that overlap each other, making it hard to know how far along the balloons are. Just like Ravine, we started off with a few dart monkeys and got a sniper. But here we have some water to work with, so we followed them up with a 001 submarine, which is an amazing boost with its seeking darts. But the fun part was placing Sada and a glaive ricochet up top. I didn't expect to use Sada for a single expert map since she has such little range, but she can actually handle a track or 2 here for pretty cheap. We used her sword leap to break open the Moab early, while the boomer and sub took out the ceramics inside. In the mid game, we defended with some spiked balls and a symphonic resonance. This was at the peak of the Mermonkey's trance, so it was a very powerful addition, letting us save up for a glaive lord. This guy's ricochets can hit the entire map, so all we needed was to break open the blimps down bottom, which we did with some overdrives and more stalling with Moab presses. But backing this up with a final harmonic was enough to get the win, as it turns the glaive lord into a single target machine with the sped up shred damage. Moving on, we have #ouch, probably the second most famous map, only behind Monkey Meadow. The start went as expected, a few dart monkeys and snipers, but we couldn't get a sub because I plan on draining the water later on. The early game was funny as we worked in a ninja and engineer, but on round 30 we finally got our hero, Geraldo. He has tons of items that'll help us out, I just have to make sure not to overspend on them. But we popped the Moab with his blade trap and pushed back the insides with a Druid of the Storm. The rest of the game was kinda funny. We got 2 discount villages and our mid-game defender in a knockback Robo-Monkey, which was even cheaper because we used Geraldo's Worn Hero's Cape to turn one of our starting darts into a Super Monkey. And we spent the rest of the game getting popless Druids in the middle of the map. This not only made our ball lightnings much better, but also set us up for the late game. The normal play with these is to get an Avatar of Wrath, but we don't have that luxury. No, we got 8 of them down and put Jerry's spicy potion on as many as we could. These add a flamethrower attack to any monkey of our choice, which is pretty solid, but they also receive the buffs of their parent. So they get the Popla stacks as well, making them very strong, especially for their price. And when we added in a ton of support, it was enough to get the win. Now, I believe all of these runs were based off guides made by Dorio. I would watch the guide before playing to get a sense of what monkeys were needed to get through the early game and try to do it from memory, as I hated figuring out where the starting dart monkeys needed to be placed. But after using a few of them, Dorio made me my own custom guide for the next map, Bloody Puddles. The only thing is, it's not the strongest strategy. I challenged him to beat it with a Dora and a preemptive strike, So now that's what I have to do. Bloodles has 5 paths that alternate in use, making you have to cover the entire map. The start was pixel perfect with a dart and sub, and we quickly filled out the map with snipers, darts, and another submarine. This let us get to the 20s, where we finally got a Dora down on round 27. This did not get us out of the woods, as round 29 was tricky, but the rest of the 30s weren't too bad, and we popped the Moab with an elk buffed sub and a couple glue gunners. The mid game was the funkiest of my life though. We got a Velociraptor and had to move it every round, and we got 3 discount villages as they work really well with the Dora. But in their range, we got a Robo Monkey with knockback and a bouncing bullet sniper, which was somehow enough to get us a tier 5 sub in the 80s. The worst wasn't over yet though. The 90s are a different animal. We had to add a ton of stalls to the right side of the map and manage our sacrifices to max out a Dora. The only nice thing was that DDTs were free with our submarine. Still, the high RBE rounds of 94, 96, and 98 took some well-timed abilities to get through, and round 100 made it to the very end before we took it out with a first strike. But somehow, we managed to first try Bloodle's chimps. Let's go! Now, I know I'm going fast through these, but they were an absolute grind. There were several months between all of these maps as I had to beat every other difficulty to set up the chimps run, and I always got the black border on camera, so if I was practicing and got really far, I'd restart and start recording. Plus, new maps got added to the game with every update, making this goal seem endless. But that just leaves us with Glacial Trail and Dark Dungeons. Luckily, one of these was pretty easy. I was just putting it off because of its gimmick. Glacial Trail only has 1 track, but we're super limited on space and vision, and every 10 rounds your towers freeze solid, so we have to plan around it. Luckily, Sada is great here as she can touch the track and there's a loop for the Bloons to pass past her again. We got through the early game with a Mortar, Juggernaut, and Ice Monkey, having all of them up for round 40, which was enough to pop everything but a Zebra, which Sada took out with a Sword Leap. The mid game was fun because the Ultra Juggernaut is very strong on this map, and when it was frozen, we beat the rounds with Sada and a Glaive Ricochet. The second tier 5 tower we got though was a Super Brittle. While not the best with these towers, it's amazing on this map because Ice Monkeys are immune to the freezing, making it super reliable. And with the rest of our money, we got a Sky Shredder in the top right, which was more than enough damage to pop the 90s, especially when it and the Ultra Jug were not frozen. And just like that, we have one map between us and 100%ing BTD6. Dark Dungeons has 4 tracks, tons of walls, and 2 hidden traps. If you click the torches in the middle, you can activate spikes that'll help you out, but they have a 50-second cooldown. I watched Lazy No Micro's guide to learn where to place things, and we were off. The start was surprisingly easy, just 6 darts and some well-timed traps. This let us get Psy in the middle of round 14, a Tack Shooter on 15, and a Druid on 18. The weirdest part though was leaving Psy on first, as they need to help out with every track and not just pop the strongest balloon. But by upgrading a few of these monkeys and picking up a Spectre, we made it to round 40. Between Psy's stuns and an AMD'd overdrive, we took out the Moab and moved into the mid game. We defended the right track with a few Juggernauts, the left with a spiked mines, and the middle with a Wizard and Jug. I was loving all the obstacles because before this and Glacial Trail, I almost never was able to work in top path darts. But we made the Wizard an Arcane Spike, the middle dart into an Ultra Juggernaut, and went back to the Wizard to make an Archmage. The nice thing is that blimps will only spawn on the top and middle tracks, so most of our defenses will go there now that we're in the late game. The plan was simple though. Buff the Archmage, give the Overdrive and Embrittlement, and get 2 Relentless Glues for stalls. This worked perfectly, getting us to round 99. But then I realized something terrible. We were just short on money to afford the tax zone, something I planned on having for round 100. I spent too much and thought I'd have to start over. But there were only 2 rounds left, so I went for it. Instead of the tax zone, we picked up another Overdrive and made our middle Spectre a 240 Spike Storm. And out of desperation, I spent the money round 99 gave us on 2 more Tack Shooters and a Dart Monkey, leaving us with just $40. I hit play, waited until the bad was on the tight turns to use Spike Storm in attempts to make it hit more spike piles, and we cracked it open right next to Psy. I instantly used their stun when the DDTs came out, and once the Archmage broke the ZOMGs down to BFBs, I used Psionic Scream, popping all of the blimps inside and getting me my 81st black border. So after 7 years and over 4,000 hours of playing the game, I got every achievement, beat every boss, and completed every map in BTD6.